Well, joining me now from Washington is Vivian Salama, White House reporter for the Associated Press. Okay, Vivian, you see these, you're in these White House press briefings every day. There was great confidence on this. Sean Spicer would come out, although they really knew they didn't have the votes. So what went wrong?
They really, until the last minute, were trying to push it. And you could tell as we got closer to the vote that they were getting nervous. The president was starting to get a little bit more reclusive. He wasn't tweeting as much. When he was tweeting, it wasn't, sort of some of the more intense attacks that we've seen in other issues. He was urging people to go out and to convince their reps to support the bill. And, so, I mean, you definitely could see the mood changing as we got closer. And that last day on Thursday, when the vote was originally supposed to happen, you could tell that things were starting to get very tense. You had the Tuesday group of lawmakers come in. You had the Freedom Caucus come in. And the Freedom Caucus was really the sticking point. Those were the group of conservatives in the House who, a lot of them were not on board with the bill. And they tried tirelessly. And I was told, and a number of us were told, that when the Freedom Caucus left the White House on Thursday, they felt that they had them on board. They felt that that was a yes, and they were going into this possibly with a win. And then the vote got postponed to Friday, and the rest, of course, is history. And so really, it was a matter of just so many concessions building up over time. Everyone sort of pulling pieces out of the tower until it finally collapsed on Friday.
So this morning, the president tweeted about Obamacare exploding, but says when that happens, that's when they'll pull together a, quote, great health care plan. So what are the risks of this strategy? You think this is where they're going to go?
I mean, there are certainly risks to it. Not only that, just the longer that you wait, the harder that it gets to get a bill together. And this is the concern that a lot of lawmakers who were on board had. And that's why they kept on saying, we need to just push forward and do this. Vote yes, and then we can make modifications later on. But if we postpone a vote, if we start a big rewrite now, then everything is going to get harder and harder. And of course, the president has said multiple times that he wants to tackle taxes next. And so if you do that, you sort of set the budget for the year, and so there's not a lot of leeway in terms of how much how much you can change things after that. And so you could be looking at a year postponement, maybe longer than that.
Well, President Trump and Speaker Paul Ryan seemed to air kiss each other. They praised each other on Friday, but the blame game has already started. So behind the scenes, Vivian, who's taking the blame here?
I mean, behind the scenes, it's still so early on, and I think that especially at the White House and certainly on the Hill, a lot of people were in a state of shock yesterday. We saw that the president blamed the Democrats, which wasn't that surprising. However, we know that he really didn't make much of an effort to court Democrats, and so it's really going to be interesting to see what the talks are behind the scenes among the Republicans. I mean, everybody sort of forgets that the Republican Party was in sort of turmoil going into the election because of the fact that they won the election. Everyone says, well, the Democrats have to do a lot of soul searching and see what went wrong. But the Republicans had a lot of soul searching to do as well. And this issue in particular, this healthcare debacle, sort of was the manifestation of those issues right there, is all of the divide and disconnect among the Republican Party. And so I think there's going to be a lot of that going on and people kind of blaming each other internally, possibly quietly, because they don't want to alienate members of their party. But it's going to happen, definitely.
And we've heard the president say he wants to move on to tax reform. There was a lot of talk behind the scenes that if this had gone through, if repealing Obamacare had gone through, that they would use about $1 trillion of Obamacare tax cuts to move into this tax reform. So where do they go from here? Is tax reform really viable?
That's what the president says. He says that he wanted to do taxes all along, and he's said it multiple times, is that, he wanted to go there first, but the whole healthcare thing was kind of blocking the way. And so we'll see what happens. I think that we're going to see Donald Trump more in his, in his comfort zone when we start talking about taxes. I mean, he was the head of a major corporation, and he's used to budgets and these kinds of things. And so I don't, the one thing that we have really been questioning is, was healthcare really his thing? I mean, was he comfortable addressing such an issue? He had a lot of people around him, and this, keep in mind, was very much a Paul Ryan fostered bill that President Trump just supported. But I think that with taxes, he's rolling up his sleeves and getting dirty in it. So it will be very interesting to see how that plays out and how successful he is in that.
Yeah, it's interesting. No one's calling for Paul Ryan to resign or give up his leadership post either. A Wall Street Journal columnist says that this sort of shows that Trump doesn't have a reliable governing coalition. What does he need to get the factions within his own party together at this point?
I mean, definitely, I think that is sort of toning down attacks. I mean, President Trump has been very outspoken in terms of when somebody does something he doesn't like, he doesn't care what party they're with, he's going to go after them. And so, I think that he's going to have to really have some private discussions with people so that everybody can be more on board and make it a collaborative effort. Again, just the internal disarray in the Republican Party is going to make things very difficult for him. Everyone celebrated that the Republicans took the House and the Senate and everything was going to be great and everything was going to sort of proceed very smoothly. And obviously this is the first piece of evidence we see that it is not that simple. And so I think he's realizing that. And I think he's also realizing that he's no longer the head of a corporation. He's the head of the United States of America, where you have to answer to the House and the Senate. You have to answer to the judiciary and the people as well. And so he's going to have to start. I think this is going to be a wake-up call ultimately for him to realize, I need these people if I'm going to get anything done.
Speaking of I need these people, Senator John McCain was asked about President Trump during a trip to Brussels on Friday. I want to play you that soundbite.
What are three of the things that President Trump needs to learn in order to be an effective president of the United States?
I think, first of all, reach across the aisle. One of the great strengths of Ronald Reagan is that Ronald Reagan reached out to the Democrats. Some remember him as a hardcore Republican. Probably his best friend in the Congress was a liberal Democrat by the name of Tip O'Neill. So the first thing, I think, outreach. And that applies right there, this issue of Obamacare.
So, Vivian, after all the attacks, is reaching across the aisle really a viable option for Trump?
I think it's the only option, really. I mean, I think he needs to wake up and realize that he is not going to get anything done without the House and Senate on his side, and especially with the people in his own party who now hold the majority and can actually make things happen if they are all one unit and they function as a group and they function together and cohesively and in support of each other. Without that, it's going to be very hard for him to get anything done. And I mean, we saw a number of things. What I'm trying to say is he needs a win right now, ultimately. He really hit a brick wall with the travel ban. He had to revise that, and even that's been challenged. He's had a number of things sort of come up against all these different challenges, and this health care bill was going to be his big win. Now that he didn't get that, I think he's going to have to really reach across the aisle. I don't see any possible alternative to him if he wants to fulfill his agenda and basically keep his promises to the voters who voted for him.
All right, Vivian Salama from the Associated Press. Vivian, thank you for joining us.